Hey guys, welcome to another Tuesday Live podcast with Jen and Joe.
Hello, hello.
And today we're going to go over some really killer things that are going to get you some deals. Like these are the tips and the tricks that we're using with us on our own team on how we're landing deals. So if you want to learn the 5 key components when negotiating a deal, we're going over that today with you live. And if you're listening to the rerun of this, I've got some great stuff. You're going to want to listen to this whole thing. It's going to be awesome today.
Yeah, and I gotta say, don't let the word negotiate scare you off. If it's something that, like I really want to buy, invest in real estate, and I really want to learn this creative financing, but I don't know how to X, Y, or Z. Well, good news for you. You can always learn. And Joe really breaks it down because you don't have to be 100% perfect when you start. You just have to pick up the phone and just begin talking and asking questions.
Right. So if you're new and you want to learn how to negotiate from a pro from the beginning and know what you're talking about, we're going to go over that today. So get your notes out. We're going to dive right into it. So the first thing that I got to go over is actually finding motivated sellers. I've been in sales my whole life, and I got to tell you, when you're trying to sell something to somebody who's not interested in what you're buying, you're going to have the worst time trying to sell them anything. You could be the best salesman, but if they don't want what you're buying, you're just with the wrong person. So what we'd like to focus on is spending the most amount of our time with the right people. And this is going to be the key. And this is the really game changer for us. I think back on all the deals that we've done over the last 20 years. And I think about one thing that always was the common theme. These were folks who weren't just thinking of maybe selling their house. They were motivated. They had some real estate thing going on. It wasn't always financial strain. Sometimes they just didn't want this house. Whatever the reason was, though, on the scale of 1 to 10 motivation, 10 being the highest, 1 being the absolute lowest, I would say there were mostly what? 8s, 9s, and 10s.
Mhm.
Maybe a 7 would squeak in there, but mostly they're on that higher scale of motivation. So what you really want to do is spend the majority of your time with probably the smallest pool of leads. I know when we first got started, how many people did I talk to?
And what does that mean, though? I think you need to explain, because like on one hand, you say you got to generate an abundance of leads,
Yep.
but then while you're doing that, it's through questions that you're asking that then you're going to label them with a motivation number.
Yeah. So the one question we're going to get into that is, why are you selling? They're going to divulge other information throughout your conversation, but really, what is their why? And if they start giving you the list of all of the motivated reasons, sometimes they have some financial issues, sometimes they have some pain, sometimes it's just a real estate problem and they don't want this house. I think of Steve. He inherited his grandfather's house, turnkey house, wanted to sell. I think of Francisco. His house was an Airbnb, gorgeous house, gorgeous neighborhood, but he wanted to sell because he didn't want to have an Airbnb and he didn't want to continue to make that mortgage
How about
payment.
Derek? He just moved to Texas.
He just moved to Texas. We just bought his house, okay? And his job transferred him, turnkey house, moved him to Texas. I think of the one we did in Irondequoit, that big fix and flip, inherited mom's house, right? And it needed a lot of work. So inherited a house, needed a lot of work. Inherited grandpa's house, turnkey, and had rented to a friend. Was an Airbnb that was, I can't say a failing business, just wasn't putting up what he wanted to, and he was spending too much attention, wanted to just get rid of it. And some of these were really fixer-uppers, but most of these were really nice turnkey houses. So each one of them had some desire. And I could keep going and going and going because I don't always remember their names, but I remember the house, the deal, the numbers, and the weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think of all the countless deals that we've done over the years, even the more recent ones. When we bought the condo, he wanted to buy a house. He already found it and was like, hey, I don't even want to worry about selling my condo. If you guys could take this thing over, done. The lady in New York, it was a fixer-upper. She didn't want to have to put it in the market and have people trampling through her house. She was kind of a private person. So she didn't want to have the town coming over. Not the town, but all the people from the town in your house.
That one's a lot more popular than I think some people would realize. And again, we have to remind ourselves, being real estate professionals, real estate full-time, we eat, breathe, sleep it. We talk about it like it's our life, right? Like it's just totally normal to buy and sell real estate. But to these homeowners, this might be the first purchase that they have ever bought. Now they're going to sell. And just the thought of, even all of their stuff, going back to Derek, he even apologized. I know you guys said that you buy as is, but I felt really bad, but I left just some stuff. And I looked at the photos. The house is perfectly fine. It's just some stuff left behind. And
it's a 2-year-old house.
yeah. And so, but the guilt that he felt, because, usually when you leave a house, you have to, and we know from experience, you're supposed to take everything from it, especially if you're selling on market. But the beautiful thing that we can offer sellers as investors is, it's okay. Like, he even accidentally left the cable box behind with Spectrum. So I think we have to return that for him somehow. But, that's the name of the game, is really being able to help these motivated sellers, because when you're dealing with people like that, it is so easy, guys. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because if you're dealing with an unmotivated seller who's just, not ready to sell, then it is like stick in mud, right? Like, nothing is moving along. But when you look at the questions getting answered and it's ding, 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 and you're like, he's like, where do I sign? You have a really motivated seller.
Yeah. So once again, qualifying, guys, helps you spend the most of your time with the right people. And this is the first step to negotiating deals. If you're negotiating with ones and twos, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to feel like you're a loser. I can't do this. It doesn't work, right? You spend the most of your time closing 9s and 10s. Your close rate is tremendously better. You're going to feel more confident. You're going to realize these conversations are much better. So right off the bat, let's help you with that. How to do that, guys? Get a ton of leads. Don't just get one lead a month. Don't get one lead a week. Get dozens per day. And if you can do it for free, like we talk about, it's a game over, right? But I'm going to dive into number 2. And you already kind of mentioned this, is asking the right questions.
Sorry, I was jumping the gun.
No, I love it, because it's a perfect transition into number 2. So number 2 is really asking the right questions. You look at all of the top negotiators, and they always talk about being a great question asker, right? So ask the great questions. And this could be many times, even really simple questions. And most of my questions in our script that we use, it's, thanks for reaching out. Tell me more about your property. Why are you thinking of selling? How soon do you want to sell? But these are some of the key questions we're going to need to know answers to. What do you owe on the mortgage? What's your monthly payment? Right? Would you be open to this terms? We do it really nicely, but these are the questions we ask. And then when we ask some of our closing questions, like, I typically buy with no money down, okay? And things like this. I'm not telling them what I'm willing to do. They're telling me what they're willing to do. So get great at asking questions, guys. I've learned this because when I first started, I will tell you, I was new at negotiating. I would start telling them, I would pay this. I'll pay you over asking if I could do this. And you don't have to do any of that. And I would say that was probably one of my biggest challenges when I was first getting started. I just felt like I had to do that all of the time. So get great at asking good questions. The other one, is that the best you can do? Right? So when they're asking what the price is for the property, this is the only thing that I really want to stick to, is just asking them questions, and keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Even when it comes down to, if we were to pay all cash and close when you want, what's the least you would take for the property? Not anything of, well, what if I were to pay this, right? So gather the information. Now, when I have that information, great. That doesn't mean that's what the deal has to be. Maybe I make a counter offer, right? And I could do that, but once I get them to give me their information first. And they talk about this a lot in sales training, is you have to be able to ask the questions and make offers. And so what we work on really, really hard is to have the seller make us the offer. And then now we make counter offers. And that's the big one of our KPIs that we track. We want to keep a close eye. How many offers are we making per day? So in your own business, if you want to close deals, we already talked about it. Get leads, that make sure you're spending time with motivated sellers. Get great at asking them some questions. Spend your time with the most motivated people. Buy those questions. Have them make you the offer. But then here's the other thing, is make sure you make your counter offer. So this is the things you're going to want to do like ASAP if you're going to be doing deals. No matter what level of experience, this works for everybody. So if you're new and you're listening to this, you can get some action going right away.
Well, I think just to kind of end on that note, in the sense of when you're asking the questions, you do a great job of not jamming them all at once, right? Like you're not like literally trying to solve the problem on the first or even second phone call. Like you're just gathering information, you're taking notes, you're going to go back and crunch the numbers, you're going to kind of run all the, use the calculator or whatever it is to figure out, is this a great deal? But, it's step by step, and you always do a great job too of mirroring that seller. So like you can hear in their voice if they're even really busy on a phone call. We did a live last week at Skura, our meetup, and there were a few sellers who were in the middle of doing something. It was not the time to negotiate.
Yep.
So I think that's really important too, is reading your seller.
And you're right. You have to mirror how they are. I mean, I think of some woman who just lost her husband and she's in this big house by herself and she's scared. And, how I have a conversation with her is different than the guy that we call once in a while, because we always follow up, but he lives in a 650 square foot house in the middle of Texas or Florida. I apologize. And he has like 8 of those big macaws that live with him. And every time those birds hear his phone ring, they all scream. And he sits there screaming at them at the top of his lungs. And he's got to go outside. And you got to kind of yell loud at him when we're talking, especially because the birds are so loud. So mirroring what you're working with is really, really important. And, get down to what their level is, asking them the questions to where you're going to want them to kind of start opening up and explaining their situation. And I feel like it's like an onion. They've got many layers to it. So by having conversations, what we're doing, but we're having questions that are open-ended questions. I don't really want to ask yes or no. I want to have questions where I could find out more about what's going on. And we're going to transition into the third thing right now, which is emphasize about solving their problems. Okay. And that's what we're here to do. Usually these folks, almost every time, they have a real estate problem. And I know some of you giggle, and I've heard it before, like, who actually has a real estate problem? I think, didn't you have somebody reach out before and like, who has an unwanted house or something like that?
We were trying to boost a post back in the day, and it said, do you have an unwanted property? And it even made me question. And I was like, well, who does have an unwanted property? And then the reality was, like, at one time I had an unwanted property and moved in with you. And, that happens a lot to people who inherit homes, become accidental landlords. They all of a sudden realize that they don't want to be an Airbnb owner. Like, there are so many people out there that do have unwanted properties.
Yeah. And so when we were doing that in the beginning, I was thinking to myself, well, they're out there. I know people who we've chatted with before who have these situations that just happen, whether it's a divorce, a death in the family, a job relocation, or just relocating for whatever reason.
A change of something happening.
Downsizing, where we had a kid, where now we need a bigger house. All of these reasons are what we hear all of the time.
And so many people saying from New York, they were moving to Florida. And now in Florida, there's a lot of people that want to move out of Florida because they've been here and realize it's too hot, too many hurricanes.
These hurricanes.
The insurance, a lot of stuff. So many reasons why. You just have to ask that question. Why are you selling? Tell me a little bit about the situation.
Yeah. And so what we're looking to do is find out what their problem is. What is the main root of their desire? So why do they want to solve? We need to find out what the problem is, because we're going to emphasize by knowing what we do, if we could help them or not. And the only way you're going to know this is by asking these questions, right? So my big one, once again, why are you selling the house? Sometimes they say, oh, it's a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood. It needs nothing. Have you thought about listing it with an agent and find out why they are reaching out to you versus listing it with an agent? Maybe they already did. Maybe it is right now. So this is a question I always want to know, because many times they can say, I've already moved. I don't have time to list it. There's a bunch of stuff left at the house.
Or it is listed, it's not selling.
And we get that all the time too. So, but I'll go over a situation yesterday that we did a live seller call on our support group. In our support group yesterday, we did a live call, and I'm talking to a seller, and she wants $215 for her house. It seems to be in decent shape. We figure out it's worth about $250. She owes about $140 on it, so she's got some equity. And she says, well, I don't have a job. I lost my job. I'm behind on payments. The bank's going to come take my house. It's going to go into foreclosure. Ideally, I would like to keep the house. I don't want to leave, but I can't afford the payment if they do the loan modification, because the payment goes up, because my interest rate goes from 3 to, I think it was like 6%. So her payment's going to go up even. And if she's struggling making the old payment, the new payment's not going to make it any better when it's higher, and she's still not working. So she's applying for disability, but it hasn't been approved yet. So she thinks it's a long wait. So she's in a situation where I'm like, obviously we can buy it, but if we do, they were kind of already talking about buying seller financing. And she initially said yes, but she has no money. So in that situation, I was like, your best bet is either to have that listed with an agent, because in your situation, you need to put the most money in your pocket.
Yeah.
And there's many times where we could buy your house and it makes sense, but the way we would buy this, because it's turnkey, most likely I'm going to buy that with seller financing, which she understood we would buy it. We could give her a small down payment to help her move, but we would just take over her old payment. She's not going to get any equity payments because there was no room in the rent to do that. So in that circumstances, it didn't work out for a deal for her, but it's pointing her in the right direction because we're helping her solve her problem.
Yeah.
And that's the point of this. And this is where I'm going with this, is we're all here to help people. And yes, there are plenty of times where we help people and just point them in the right direction. And sometimes it's doing business with us. Sometimes it's something else. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, there are plenty of people that we do help and we get paid for doing that too. And it's just help as many people as you can. And I feel like it always comes back to you. So by learning this craft, it's just one extra way to be able to buy a house. If I was only working on, fixer-uppers that I can make offers on, half off on because they need a bunch of work, that's one thing. But what happens with that beautiful house in the beautiful neighborhood that needs nothing, but they really need to sell it? And they listed it with the agent, like you said, and it didn't work. And they're frustrated and they need to go and they need to sell it fast because of some reason. That's why we love creative finance, because now I could buy that without having to get a bank approval, no credit check, and turn that into one of our rentals. Better yet, rent to own, but that's a whole other thing.
Well, I think that is something that is so important. Like, I don't know how you're kind of like skimming by it there, but like, it's ethical real estate, right? It's like looking at these are people. And I think that's where we're really big on our program, is like getting to the root of the issue, being able to point them in the right direction, because there are people out there who they just look at dollar signs and the next deal and the next closing. But when you are running it like transactional like that, like it can cause a world of problems, first of all, but also like for us, like we always talk about, success is a good night's sleep, right? So like knowing that like you're at least trying to point this woman in the right direction, because you really hear like her situation, and just by asking a simple few questions, digging a little bit deeper and really finding out the heart of that. And I think it's a part where some people get nervous to ask those questions because they maybe think it's too personal, but like give yourself permission to do that, because this is a people business.
Well, and you hit a spot on the head because, I love helping people. I just absolutely love to help them. And once again, if there's a way to get them more money for that one property, like what she has said, you never know, because the market where she is, if she sells it even more than she's asking for it, there was a lot of action going on there. It's a pretty nice area.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty confident she's going to sell the property quickly if she lists it at the right price, which I think 250 is still great.
Well, even your buddy today or the other day, you said you were chatting and they inherited a home, and you told, hey, like the best way to do this is do a clean out and list it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the investor might not always be the best fit for someone, and just knowing that, then being okay with that, and just arming yourselves with other tools to be able to say like, hey, this is a great resource, or this is something to try. And, I think this person might be able to help you.
Well, so some of you listening, like, hey, your friend reached out, had inherited this house and it needed a bunch of work. Why didn't you buy it, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is, I wish it was always that easy, but now you're not dealing with just my friend. You're dealing with other family members who also all have a say on what's going to go on with that property and how they want to sell it and the way they want to do it. And so some situations, guys, like we said, this works. In their situation, because I had the conversation with him, I understand it wasn't just his decision. Because if it was, he would have been like, hey, dude, take this house, pay me, do it. I want you to make money too, because he understands that.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, when there's multiple family involved, it's not just one person's decision.
Yeah.
And you got to do the best.
And emotions run high. So just remember, like, the situations that you're dealing with. People are usually in stressful situations when they're unexpectedly having to sell a house.
But I appreciate the fact that they did reach out.
Yeah.
That we could have a conversation about it. And this is what it is. But I feel like, too, we do plenty of deals. I'd always love to do more. Everybody wants to. But we could do plenty of deals where I want to make every opportunity count and I want to make them all work. But there's going to be some situations where you just know it's not the right fit for what they need to have happen. Mm-hmm. And so just from what you learn, point them and help them. Okay. The next part, number 4, this is going to be a key, guys, is using the right closing phrases. Okay. There always be closing, right? Always. So when we are in a conversation with the seller, there are many times where I don't just ask for the sale or the buy if we're buying one time, right? I might be asking several different times, not like, does it work now? Does it work now? Does it work now? No, I do not do it like that. Okay. Listen to our phone calls. I've recorded a ton of them. They're all online. You could listen to these live calls, guys. There's a bunch out there of me locking up deals. So, but when I'm doing this, I'm setting subtle things in there. So for an example, like one of the things I always want to know, and I have this happen a lot, is sellers going to say, Joe, come see the house. Just come out and see it.
Let's take a look.
And I'll tell you, I used to, I no longer do for many reasons. One, if I come out and see the property, it better be really close to my house because I don't want to drive super far for houses when we do them all virtually anyways. But for me, before I go see that house, I need to understand what the price and terms are going to look like before I even go over there. Because once you get there, oh boy, I remember that one time.
Which one?
Okay, the one that popped in my head where I was stuck at that lady's house for like 3 hours.
I don't think I was with you.
No, it was that one in Henrietta that I was green pea. I'm like, oh my gosh, she might go do terms. And I got there and she's like, just come look at it. And I did.
I didn't think you were coming home then.
I didn't know if I was going to get out. It was like
I was calling you. I think you had your phone in the car.
It was like a scary movie. Nothing bad happened. She was great, but I just couldn't get away.
Yeah. 2017 when you first started doing
this. So either way, what you really want to do is make sure. So one of the things I ask is like, hey, if I come out and see the property, are you willing to get the paperwork started right then?
Say that one more time. Somebody had espresso today.
I did have Starbucks. I apologize. I did not bring you one. If we come out and see the property, are you ready to get the paperwork started today? I always want to know that, right? And I want to know that. We're going to ask some other questions prior to that, but that is always one question I want to know before I come see the house, right? So if you're going to go see one, make sure you ask them that, because if they say, no, I got to check with the mailman, the milkman, the whatever, you want to stop right there and find out if that's going to stop them or if there's some other conversation that needs to be had. You know, one of the other things too, when I'm starting to go back to the deal, we ask questions. You know, if I do buy and we agree on the rest of the terms and there's no closing costs and fees, what's the least you'll take for the property? Like, they're going to give me their price. I'm going to go over, I typically buy with no money down. These are the things that we're going to go over. But now, once we do go over these things and I know the payment and the term length they're open to, I go back and I usually memorize it, but if not, you could take some notes and I read back to them what we just talked about. And I want to firm it up. So you're saying, Jen, if I buy your house at $200,000 and I give you the $5,000 down, you're open to me taking up your payment and paying that in the next 15 years. Is that right?
So that means I have to wait 15 years for you to buy my house? No,
I'm going to buy it now. I just got 15 years to pay it off. Sometimes it could be sooner, but I got up to 15 years.
Okay.
Right? So I'm going back over the same questions and I'm setting this up to a closing. So if I do that, what we just agreed on, do we have a deal?
Yes.
Okay. So are you ready to get the paperwork started if I get that done right now?
Sign me up.
Okay. So I'm confirming a close. I'm asking closing questions, and I'm even asking closing questions sooner in the conversation many times. Like, hey, if we could agree on the rest of the terms, are you getting ready to think about selling it now, or would you want to wait a little bit? And if they're like, I need to sell it now, right? So I'm putting us in the frying pan. Okay, great. I think we could do business. So I'm setting it up earlier in the conversation. So when I say things like that, like, oh, good, great, I think we could do business, that's setting a subtle tone in their head that, okay, sounds like this is going to get real, right? So I'm not just going to hit them one time, because also too, maybe that they say no earlier on. Maybe there's something that you just haven't covered yet.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the worst thing in the world is trying to close somebody who's not there yet. Right. There's some unanswered questions. And then you know what happens when you go to close them. I'm going to help y'all. Joe, that sounds good, but I need to think about it.
Ooh, the dreaded think about it.
I need to think about it. Okay. I'm helping y'all with negotiating today. So that generally means you probably missed something and you were trying to close too early. So I'm going back over the features of the price, the payment, the down payment, the term length. I'm asking them what we just agreed on. You're saying that would work for you? Yes. And if we do that, you're ready to get it started now? Yes. Right? If they say, no, I still need to think about it, I totally understand. Other than those four things, what part did you want to think about? Was it like you're going to keep the house and not sell it at all? Or was it just something about those numbers?
Well, I really wanted my attorney to take a look at everything.
Right.
Popular.
So it can be just that. But this is how I go over that. I actually agree with them. Yeah, that's a really big decision. I agree. You probably should think about it. But other than the numbers, what part of it did you need to think about? Was it you're not going to consider selling the house and you're going to think about keeping it? Or was it something to do with these?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of almost throwing the house back on her lap. Like, you just want this thing because it's so nice. Or is it like, hey, some of these numbers are off? And she might say either, yes, I really wanted $7,000 down, Joe, and you only said 5. And I want to identify what that one thing is. So,
and if you don't address that soon enough, you could lose the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
The next person that calls
offered them 7. Yep. They might offer them 10. I'll do $25,000 down, because you know how sometimes that happens.
Some people aren't trained properly.
Hey, now that's why we're here to help you, so you don't be that guy or girl. So this is going to be the last thing we're going to go over, is always close with clarity. Okay. We want to be crystal clear on what we're doing. The best thing that we like to do is, once we're making a deal, and okay, so here's the next step is what's going to happen. Everything we just agreed on, I'm going to put it on paper. We're going to go over it together. I'm going to be there to answer any questions that you have, but it's going to be exactly what we talked about. This price, once again, right? That payment again, right? Yep. And that much money down, the $7,000. Yep. And you'll let me do the 15 years. Okay, good. So it's going to say those things, and it's simple, just my name, your name, or my LLC.
And do you say like no money down if they've agreed to no money down, or you just, how do you word that?
If I've said I typically buy with no money down, okay, then I'm going to just say, okay, well, so we agreed to this price. I'm going to cover all the closing costs and fees, and I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to rub in their face like, I got it for no money down.
Right. Well, I think that's a little step there that you just want to like.
Don't do that.
Right.
Right. But that's
less is more.
Well, I think it's still transparent. They've already agreed on it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to continue to bring that up, because that's, well, wait a minute, down payment. Isn't that supposed to be like 30% down? Like the lady said to
30% plus banks are charging 7. So I'm going to charge you 10.
Yeah. She's like, well, the banks are charging you 7. So I'm going to want 10, because it's more risk on me, because I'm not a bank and they are. I want you to overpay for my house and then give me $30,000 down for it, or 30%. No, I'm sorry. 20% down.
20%. Oh, she said 30.
You're right. It was 30%.
30%. Yeah.
So yeah.
We're obviously, I haven't written that one up yet. Working on her.
But so closing with clarity is going to be my key to it. I want them to understand what we're doing it. So I'm going to buy it once again. Once we close on it, it's going to be my insurance policy. I'm going to be paying your payment directly to your lender. Or if it's a seller finance deal, which are my favorite deals, then I'm just going to be paying you directly a payment. It's going to start on whatever date.
And sometimes you just really need to reiterate too that like we own the house. I think sometimes the sellers just, well, I don't want to own the house anymore. I don't want to be responsible. And you just, that reassurance and that closing is really important.
Yeah. And then the one thing, like you said, I'm letting them know we are purchasing the house. So you're free just to move on. And I will say, if once you explain that to them, because you're not renting it? Like they might even ask you that question at that point, right? So this is why it's really great to make sure you're closing with clarity. There's a lot of moving parts with these deals. Once you've done them, you're going to realize they're not as hard as they sound to be. But for the first few, you definitely need to know, have somebody look over that for you. But I think that's the key, is explaining to them what's going on, so they understand. It's clarity, not the, oh, you never told me that.
Right.
I'll tell you, I was in sales for 20 years, and you never want to hear that. So get very consistent at your processes of how you're explaining this to them. Make sure you're explaining it. And I'm not picking on anybody, but like at a 6th grade level, and I'm not saying you're talking down to people, but you're just explaining it so crystal clear, not using big investor terms and subject to, and I'm going to buy it with my land trust and the beneficiary and trustee, blah, blah. Okay.
It's all going to be in the paperwork, but you're just going to confuse your seller if you're just on this part of closing. And they're going to be able to see all that in writing, sitting with the attorney, the title company. But at this part, that is not the time to give them an education in real estate investing.
Yeah. So we explained that we could buy it this way, that we have great attorneys and title companies to cross all the T's and dot the I's. But I'm not going to give a real estate course. Just really come crystal clean on what you're doing. Make sure they get it, you get it. And if all looks good, you put it on paper, guys, and you get the paperwork okayed. Okay. So these are the 5 steps that we do consistently, and what you could do to start getting leads today, to start talking to people. Make sure you're spending time with the motivated people, asking the right questions, solve their problems, always be closing, and then close with clarity so everybody's just fully transparent and on the same page. And if you do good business, like Jenn said earlier, the definition of success,
good night's sleep.
You know it, guys.
So make sure that you're always having the proper paperwork, the correct attorneys, title companies, do all of the things properly. This is not a Starbucks closing by any means. We go through all of the right rigmarole, really, all the little steps that are really, really important, right down to the notary over here at the dining room table.
Yeah, so this isn't something that gets closed like I'm drawing up something on a napkin. It's like every deal is professionally closed and recorded. So just do it the right way and
don't shortcut it.
No.
It's never worth it.
Now's not the time.
Yeah.
So cool, guys.
High five.
Bam. So, all right. So stay tuned because next week we got another banger, guys, coming for you. So don't want to miss this. And I would also say too, if you haven't already checked us out, we're on all the podcast channels, Spotify, you name them, they're all there. Make sure you're listening. Join our Facebook group. This is a free group for everybody. We share this podcast live. We do Q&A. We're sharing a ton of things. There's even deals in there too. So if you're not part of the Facebook group, go there now. Go join it. Creative Finance Playbook with Jenn and Joe. And then same thing, our YouTube channel. So,
and I'd also say, if you haven't gone over to our website, like we have webinars coming up where we go in depth and walk you through how to buy these properties, $100 down. So be sure to sign up for those because we send out all the goodies weekly, and we promise we don't spam. We are here for you.
Yeah, but you said there's like a lot of like great stuff in these
emails. we've been sharing all of the behind the scenes. I wrote you like a little love letter about how I admire your work.
And can you say these are not some like computer, this is Jenn writing and sharing, and we're just sharing a ton of the
real. I just shared yesterday in our email that went out how buyers are liars and sellers are worse. So sometimes they like to back out on you, and you know what? That's why it's really important to have a huge flowing lead machine. So get your deals all stacked up. Make sure that you are generating leads like crazy. Now is not the time to pump the brakes. So, all right, guys. Till next time, be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back.
See you guys.
Bye.